the park bench like bookends. A newspaper blown through the grass falls on the round toes of the high shoes of the old friends. Old friends, winter companions, the old men lost in their overcoats, waiting for the sunset. The sounds of the city sifting through trees settle like dust on the shoulders of the old friends.
So you asked me why we came down to NJPAC and did this series. It's because of the two of you. We have Eric Comstock and Barbara Fasano. I want to thank both of you for being with us. Now, you were with us in March 2004 on One-on-One, and something happened that day. What was it?
I got engaged, actually, to this person here.
No!
Yes!
It was momentous. It was momentous. We began with you. Now, we're not ending with you, but we did begin with you.
Beautiful. And that first song we heard was Old Friends.
Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon, and such a song.
Beautiful stuff. And a little bit later on, you're going to be performing
a Count Basie classic called Broadway. And Count Basie, of course, is a New Jersey musical legend among many New Jersey musical legends. These are both songs from our recent Algonquin Hotel hit show, Hell of a Town, a New York soundtrack.
You know, one of the things that always amazes me about the two of you is that you perform together, you're together so much, and you seem to have this very breezy, that word has been used to describe style, very easy relationship. What are you laughing for? Like, true.
Oh, don't believe everything you read.
Come on.
No, it's true. I think that Eric and I began our relationship because we made each other laugh. I mean, that was really how it happened. We had our first date, and it was what we now call the greatest first date ever, and it was really a success because we laughed all night long. And I think that's a big part of our relationship. We have a really good time together.
And
I mean,
music,
it's a wonderful thing.
The music obviously brings you together, and when you're not performing.
Well, I think I should say, you know, we were married for a full year after we saw you. We were married 6 months after we were on with you. And then another year went by before we were invited to appear together. It had not particularly occurred to us to work an entire show together. I've been a guest in some of Barbara's Harold Arlen concerts, and she in a few of my things. And we were invited to go to the Colony Hotel in Palm Beach, and then a gig right after that in St. Louis. And they asked, how about you do something, cook something up together? And
right.
we were hesitant.
Why?
And it worked out so well because of the fact that we had these separate identities, and it was working very, very well. And these things don't necessarily have to work.
And
we fell in love as people first.
Right,
I'm sorry, he was talking. You interrupted him.
Right, no, I mean, yes, that's right. So that's how it
She's
works.
calibrated,
That's how it works.
Oh, you are
A
calibrated.
lot of room for interruption. Yeah, so he knows that. He knows that better now than he did 8 years ago.
And he is not Italian.
He's not Italian. He's English and Irish.
I was raised to mayonnaise, but I upgraded to olive oil.
To olive oil, ba-dum-bum.
And the music that you listened to growing up was?
Well, the music that I listened to growing up was a combination of great jazz, because my dad, you know, who was a Brooklyn Italian guy, of course, loved music, loved to sing. And so his idols were Crosby and Armstrong and Sinatra and Ella and, you know, all the Sarah Vaughan, all the great jazz singers, and he had a great record collection. And I was the youngest by 12 years in my family, and so my older brother and sisters had singer-songwriter material. So my musical education was always a mix of the great jazz singers and the great jazz standards, and singer-songwriters like Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and
Paul Simon.
And Paul Simon. So that's always been to me what the American Songbook is. You know, the mix.
My parents fell in love in New York and in Greenwich Village, and they went to clubs there, and they saw what was considered the golden age of New York, nightclub singing or cabaret singing. So they saw Mabel Mercer and Bobby Short, and they had a record called Noel Coward at Las Vegas. I grew up on that strange stuff, less so than rock. I came along to the pop tunes a bit later, but I was that peculiar guy who really liked those kind of Cole Porter, George Gershwin type songs. I didn't understand all the innuendos in the lyric, but I loved them right away. I knew, because as you know, my dad was a newspaper man.
Yep.
The English language mattered. So I was drawn to those lyrics, and I've happily found a way to make my living doing it. And now we get to work together and travel around the country together. So it's all great.
Describe the audiences. I mean, when I went to see you perform a few years back in New York, I was struck by the eclectic nature of that audience that came to see you perform. Today, the audiences that you attract, describe them.
Well, it's a mix. I think, of course, there's always the older generation who grew up with the music of World War II, and to them, that's their story, you know? So they love to hear the great standards. But there are young people for whom this music is sort of a revelation, you know? And it's wonderful when we look out in the audience and we know that we're singing to people who've already known this music and already loved this music, and then newer audience members who have no idea about this repertoire and are really moved by it, you know?
The cabaret term, is one that I know that you're not a big fan of. Why?
I think it's misunderstood. At best, it's misunderstood, and also there are negative connotations to the phrase cabaret. It sounds like a gentleman's club or something, and you know, I really think I don't know the right word for it. They used to be called cafe singers. Obviously, it has something to do with a place in which alcohol is served, but we consider ourselves jazz musicians who sing the jazz and pop standard songbook and try and mix our Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn with our Cole Porter and Rodgers and Hart. And we feel it's a very seamless mix.
Why does it not get old? I mean, why? My wife, Jennifer, and I, there's a little bit of an age difference, and I'll talk about Sinatra, and I'll talk about, you know, some of the Cole Porter stuff, which I didn't know, but because I got interested in Sinatra, you know, I started wanting to understand some of the great, you know, not just performers, but writers and composers. And I was like, who are these people? And my wife was like, what's up with that? and I don't know if it's an age thing. I really don't know. But my point is, who is it that you attract in terms of those folks like Gershwin and those folks? Do people say, oh, I just can't get that stuff, and then once they get it, that's it? Because I haven't been able to get my wife into it.
Once you start to listen to the songs and you really understand it's all about emotion as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we can always talk about craft and we can talk about expertise, but when it comes down to it, it's all about an emotional experience.
Right.
And so when you hear a great singer sing one of these great songs and you're moved by it, then you're having a visceral experience.
And it's a generational difference also, because Jennifer's generation, it's the pop stars were the writers. This is a different element because it's two different jobs. It's the creators, and then they hand it to the pros who perform. But it's a bit different.
But before we set up this last song you're going to do, what also strikes me is it doesn't get old. Meaning, well, we get older.
Good bones, bones and
Yeah.
good structure. And as Barbara says, the emotional content. It's witty, it's funny, it's occasionally very dirty, and subtly so. Cole Porter, I mean, was so ahead of his time. But the emotional things are ageless and timeless.
Yes, and they're writing about the human experience in such a succinct and powerful way. Love and loss and longing. I mean, that's everything that we feel in our day-to-day existence.
Promise me Sinatra never gets old.
Oh no!
Right?
He's here for good. Sarah Vaughan too, here in Newark, and the great performers. They didn't every record they made wasn't a classic, but they made so many, and the great ones are as great as it gets.
Set up the last piece again. What are we going to hear?
This is a tune called Broadway, and it was a hit for Count Basie and his band, the kid from Red Bank himself.
Well, Red Bank,
musical legend.
Again, but we are in Newark, so that's why Sarah Vaughan, you know.
Oh, indeed.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Barbara Fasano and Eric Comstock, it's been 8 years. Don't let it be 8 years again.
That would be wonderful.
Thank
you for joining
Steve.
us. Good
Thank you
stuff.
so much.
This is Conversations at NJPAC. I'm Steve Adubato. We had great conversation, but also great performances. We're right back right after this. Go for it.